Good evening, everyone. It's 7:30 on May 8th, and we will start with the pledge and move into our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You okay, Dana?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. We have a topic. Okay. So does anybody have any announcements they would like to make? Please.
I had mentioned a few weeks ago, Sarah, celebration of life for Sharon Rowe, a local resident who passed away. It's at Bethany, on Saturday at 3 p.m. And it's supposed to be outdoors.
Oh, wow. Great. Thank you. Anybody on this side? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to start with the happiest of occasions. Happy Mother's Day to all those moms and mom adjacent folks who have been so kind as to raise families and work so hard every day. Mother's Day is this Sunday, and I would be remiss if I didn't suggest that you go to one of our wonderful restaurants or buy from our local florists or any of our other wonderful gift shops, etc. For your moms. So happy Mother's Day to everybody. And we'll wait for Father's Day to do a similar exciting thing. Somehow Mother's Day is like, I think, the second largest day for flowers in the United States. Father's Day, not so much so. Should be, but not so much so. So that's one thing. I do want to answer a few emails that I received, just to confirm that indeed there was a fire yesterday on Spring. And indeed, there was a person who did die in that fire. It was pronounced dead, I guess, at Phelps, if I'm not mistaken. We're not going to discuss all the details. His mom was there. We were with the family. I want to say that it's been many, many years since we've had a death due to a fire. Not that we haven't had fires, but our fire department is pretty amazing. But I did get a chance to go there and stay around. So was Maddie Sahaj from the village manager's office. The building department came down. But I just want to share, just for the record, so one day when people look at this video, they know that it was said. The number of fire trucks, fire people, first responders, EMT, folks from the county, folks from Peekskill, down to like bringing water bottles, actually very high yesterday, was pretty amazing. So when we do our budgets, we have to remember how much goes into saving human life or house. What I found amazing and almost intriguing is how quickly the fire was put out. There has to be a lot of sort of search and a lot of issues. There were also a lot of pets there in the house. The neighbors came out. There were school buses that had to get through. There was a whole logistics that went on in the afternoon. It was quite something to watch. I've never actually seen that in play before. So for me, it was quite amazing to watch. And it made me very proud of all of our folks. And I'm sure I'm leaving lots of people off, but I'm telling you, there were teams of people. There were also people from mental health, the mental health group helping the mom, trying to find housing for her because she doesn't have relatives in the area, who were just so professional. Honestly, I was just standing on the side, doing the best I can to help as much as we can. And it's a sad day. So I'm just so overwhelmed by how many people were involved and how professional and how helpful everybody was and really stepped up. And the police was there as well. I forgot to mention that. It was really quite amazing. So people in the community should know the fire department, all the first responders that we have and how outstanding they are. I would have preferred not to have seen it yesterday, but since it was going on, I just wanted to be mindful of that. So I thank everybody for that help. Next week, Maddie Sahaj and I think it's just the two of us, are going to be up at the New York Conference of Mayors to learn all about new codes, new laws, new opportunities, new ways of doing things. We usually have a bigger crowd, I think, going to NICOM this year, but we don't go every year. We go, when we need to. I haven't been to one in a while, so I won't be here next Wednesday. But not to worry. The ship will rise and move forward without me. It'll be great. So I think that's it for the announcements. We're on. I'm so used to looking to my right, and now all night I'm going to have to look to my left. Maddie Sahaj is taking over as the assistant village manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, board. So tonight we have a couple agenda items that our consultant planner Valerie Monastra is going to be leading or co-leading on, starting with an exciting project that's a few years in the making. The Indian Brook Croton Gorge Overlay is a project that affects, I think it's 5 total municipalities. So this is the Indian Brook, which we know from our water treatment plan is our reservoir, which is actually situated within the town of Ossining, but the watershed is obviously much wider. And Valerie's been working closely with the village team, as well as the folks in the town of Ossining. And then the other communities are, I think, Portland, Croton, and Newcastle. Yeah, so a very deep bench here. So Valerie is going to be sort of introducing what is one of the last steps in this process, which has been funded along the way by, I think, more than one grant, to sort of help us get to a place where we can learn better how we're going to consider this overlay that our watershed and thus our drinking water supply. So turn it over to Val.
All right, so just a little background. This project actually started back in 2005. It was originally a watershed study was done with all 5 municipalities of the Indian Brook and Croton Gorge watersheds. After that, after the plan was developed, it was decided that the next step would be to try to work on an overlay. And so that has taken actually many years in the making in terms of developing this overlay. The overlay itself would be adopted specifically focusing on protecting natural water resources, implementing stormwater management practices, promoting sustainable development, and then also regulating activities that can take place within the watershed. More importantly, I think, I just want to highlight that if you actually look at the map itself, and I think it's on page 2 of the memo, it's very little of the village of Ossining boundaries that fall within the Indian Brook basin. So it's only going to be a small amount of the village of Ossining that would fall under this watershed. But because the village of Ossining's drinking water resources, Indian Brook Reservoir would fall under this watershed, you are a major player within this overall overlay district. And one of the things that we have made sure, the village went through a drinking water source protection plan with your superintendent of water, Andy Teese. And as a part of that overall plan, this concept of having this overlay take place between the 5 municipalities was more or less incorporated into that plan. So this is really the culmination of, all the different planning efforts that you have been undertaking in terms of protecting the drinking water sources for Indian Brook Reservoir. I think for the most part, a lot of the regulations in there will not necessarily apply to the properties in terms of like potential future development and stuff like that. It's really focused on areas within like Newcastle and Croton that have a lot of septic systems, also areas that potentially have a lot of redevelopment potential. But, I would highly encourage continuing to move forward with this because it is really a cooperative agreement amongst the 5 municipalities in terms of, and it really does protect the drinking water sources for all residents in the village of Ossining. Any questions?
Thank you, Mallory. So, because it's such a, looking at the map is, as you mentioned, is just a small portion of the village.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm an property owner on one of those parcels in there, and I want to do an addition to my house. What does that look like to me?
It doesn't change the process at all. Really, a lot of this focuses on specifically dealing with if you have wetland areas, additional buffers to wetland areas. It specifically focuses on if you have septic systems, doing additional testing and checking of the septic systems. It also specifically has prohibited uses and practices. And, you know, some of that includes like new underground storage petroleum tanks, which the village doesn't even allow for the most part. And, you know, it prohibits junkyards, landfill, domestic industrial construction, demolition or hazardous materials. One of the things that we did as part of this, we looked at all the prohibited uses and made sure they weren't going to conflict with anything that's already existing in that. Or something that, you know, isn't necessarily something the government undertakes, you know, for the village of Ossining that would cause a conflict in that.
Okay, so that's perfect. So, but let me ask you this, because does that mean when an application goes in front of the building department, when someone goes in there, do they have that application, does it have to go to a consultant that we hire to verify any of those conditions? If they're not clear enough?
Right. I mean, no, I mean, it would be part of your normal review in front of the planning board or building department in terms of, you know, issuance of a building permit.
Okay, so I just don't want to create an additional layer of things where, you know, like when we have wetlands, for
Right.
argument's sake, you know, there are portions that may be exempt because we did exemptions when we did the wetlands itself.
That's
So I
correct.
don't see any exemptions in here. If there are any, or you guys went over this and say, you know what, it's not going to be anything that will relate it. I see, you know, a lot of you know, pests, you know, pesticides and stuff like that in here. Obviously, again, they're not related, you know, those septics. I don't think any part of the village in that section has a
No,
septic. So,
correct.
so that will be for me an exception, if anything, sure.
Right.
Or a well is an exception. I don't think anybody in that section. I don't think we in the village have any people that
No,
have
you do
wells.
not. No. So
So,
a lot of this is actually not going to apply to
Okay.
those areas of the village. But you know, you are part of one of the 5 communities.
Yeah.
To a larger extent, these regulations are really focused more towards the undeveloped lands that
okay.
are still located in Cortland, Newcastle, and the town of Ossining.
When it's more or less based on this, when is this going to be taken into effect?
Well, we would need, first it has to go to the planning board. Of course. Use my FM voice. We would need first, it has to get referred to the planning board because it is a zoning text change. So it'll have to go there first, then it will come back to this board for a public hearing. You know, we'll have to just put it into a format for the village board, for the planning board. So the first thing would be a resolution referring this to the planning board. So for their consideration at a future planning board meeting, then it'll come back here. And then the local law can be voted on by you folks. There would be, I guess there'd be secret documents that would go, you know, just the with regard to that. But first step from our end would have to get this to the planning board for their review.
Okay, thank you. And Valerie, because you've been, you know, you sort of started in 2005, you said, sure. So you started this project.
That's correct. I wasn't much in this project.
Do you want to do a 10-year anniversary?
No. The reason why I'm asking is I'm sure a lot of things changed from that portion to now. And what you presented to us is pretty much an agreement to all the other 4 municipalities as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Croton has already adopted their regulations. I mean, I'm sorry, not Croton, Cortland. Croton is in the process of bringing their regulations to, and the town board, and the town of Ossining has already reviewed theirs, and Newcastle has also reviewed theirs.
Okay, so we are last?
No, I mean, you're the last to have the initial conversation, but not the I mean, everyone else is still in the review
Yeah,
process.
okay, all right, no problem. I mean, I'm okay with this. You know, it seems like it's not gonna be affecting that much of the parcels, and nothing additional is gonna be included to a landlord or someone that owns property in that area. So I'm okay with the concept of moving forward, so, but thank you.
Anybody else? Questions or comments? Oh, I didn't realize it was 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I like that.
Mayor, can you put your microphone on, please?
What happened to my microphone is dead? No, maybe not. It's like blinking. Okay. Thanks. Okay, we'll just shut this. Okay, here we go. So I like the regionality of it. You know, it's good to do some of these things. It's unfortunate though that it also takes longer, but okay, no big deal. So I think it's great. It looks like most of us think move forward. It looks like I'm seeing head shake. Yeah, okay. So thank you, Valerie, and everybody else that worked on it, because I'm sure it was many people.
Yes,
I like the consistency. It looks good. Thank you.
thank you.
This is somebody's note. Or do I just keep this one and you take the other one?
You know, Valerie is staying with us for the next agenda item. I believe it was back in February, that Valerie, as part of a couple different things that, have come up, in sort of the building slash planning world in Ossining, with a proposal to, formalize the way that we treat EV charging stations. So when we had originally, broached this with the board was interested in hearing more and had a little feedback. So Valerie and Stuart have been working hard to incorporate that feedback, and they are here with an update.
Sure. So, just a little bit of background. When we last were here with the board wanted to move forward with, all levels of potential charging stations and to try to streamline the process as much as possible, but still provide, appropriate land use board, review. So, Stuart, as well as myself and, Joe, came up with a concept basically that we're posing today. This would involve, allowing for EV charging stations, throughout the village of Ossining. What it would do is, for the most part, we're proposing an administrative process. So it's not necessarily that every EV charging station that gets installed needs to go before, a planning board. But we are proposing to have site plan review that will be required for all new construction of EV charging stations, which reduce the number of parking spaces below what is required already on existing parking lot. Retrofits of an existing parking lot that either reduces or moves an ADA accessible, space. And then also addition of EV charging stations that will have some sort of, externally illuminated, screens, that are located within 50 feet or of a public right of way or residential zoning district. Other than that, we would allow for the, installation of EV charging stations as an administrative process. There's clearly regulations that we're proposing as part of that administrative process, that the building department would make sure that, the EV charging stations meet. And if they do, then they would be able to go ahead and do the installation. So that if the board wants to move forward with that, then that would be something that would again be, an amendment to the zoning. And then in addition, because technically some of these, EV charging stations, especially the level 3s that come from, like it would be almost like an individual, company that would come in and put EV charging stations onto a parking lot. Some of them actually have some sort of advertisement associated with them. That technically falls under your definition of billboards within your sign regulations. And so we also are recommending some updates to the sign regulations to incorporate those types of screens, plus additional protections in terms of, size as well as lighting, and also making sure that there's no noise associated with them, and, how those would be located.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? To my right,
Not for me.
to my left? Manny?
Thank you, Valerie. No, I read this and it seems like you pretty much addressed all the concerns that we had. Just out of curiosity, when you're talking about billboard and the right of way, how would you quantify a right of way with that a particular lot does not, the street in front of one of the lots, it does not belong to the municipality itself, falls under a different municipality? How would you address that situation?
Well, I mean, I think we're referring to a public right of way, so we could technically still
Even
require.
though it does not fall into the village of Austining?
Right, so if you're talking about something on like the border of like, one of the
Any
communities,
border.
yeah, so,
For
you know.
example.
So right now, we don't specifically say a village public
just
right of
public.
way,
Public.
or just public right of ways.
Okay, okay.
And this way, I mean, this will also, for example, if like it's near New York State Department of Transportation, this would allow for the building department just to make sure and, do those additional checks as opposed to having it just an administrative process.
Okay.
And that's our suggestion, but clearly that is something that we could look at amending if.
No, I
we
think
were to.
that will address my concerns. I think that's not fair. If they have a question that, you guys can figure that out, I'm sure, but yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Any regulation requirements for maintenance and removal?
So we do have some standards specifically for decommissioning. So we are
Oh, that's
suggesting having like a decommissioning plan submitted as part of the permit process. This is specifically because some of these EV charging stations within 10 years, they need to start having certain replacement and stuff, and this would hopefully prevent somebody from having like basically abandoned EV charging stations throughout the village of Austining. So our suggestion is to have a decommissioning plan, not necessarily similar to what you a lot of times are required as part of like battery energy storage installations, but not as intensive because it's a slightly different type of use and less intensive also in use.
Okay, so that's a plan, and if they don't follow the plan, what happens?
So, and they're typically, I mean, what we are proposing is that, I mean, if the board wants, you could. I believe we have in here. Thank you.
Is a security.
Yeah.
But we do that similarly with the telecommunications.
Good, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Okay, 10 years is too long. They're actually now like 5 years because it's each generation that comes in.
Right.
So in other parts of the country where they've had this for a long time, a lot of these things are sold. Nobody uses them. The people who might work, if it's a commercial, they'll just park there. It just starts being like old meters
Right.
that look broken all the time. It's just a bad look. Physically, does it really matter? No, but it just starts like, you have to hold people responsible for putting things in. I'm assuming they're going to charge for it in a development. So they're making money on it at some point, not right away, but there has to be a responsibility. Also, I'm concerned about how many times developers build and flip or sell off, and then the new owners really don't keep up with the original agreements.
Right.
We're trying to get, so I'm trying to tighten that up a little bit. I didn't realize the official word is decommissioning. I like that. But let's tighten it if you have it already. And I didn't read the whole thing, so.
Okay.
Because I missed that, but I know we
can-
discussed it.
We can take a look at it again. And the other thing too, I just want to mention, right now, the New York State has not created a model regulation similar to that they have for battery energy storage and solar. So we believe the structure that we have provided you, that if for some reason New York State does come out with a model law, we should be able to incorporate any other, additional regulations or standards that they're suggesting. But I think for the most part, we worked off of a structure that was similar to some of their other model laws. So we think that it would be something similar to this.
Great. Okay. Everybody okay with this? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know
A
that.
question about these screens that are referred to, which are used for advertising and stuff?
Yes.
Is that pretty typical of it? Like if a company installs these, they'll have these screens for additional revenue for selling ads and stuff?
Yeah, so part of these and like some of these, and you're gonna probably get an application soon, which sort of prompted this whole discussion, is that, they do have advertisements on these screens. Because the company is getting money for the advertisements, they're able to offer a reduced charge to customers for the EV charging. So they will, I mean, and this is going to be more commonplace than not, except if for some reason you happen to have like in residential, some of your maybe multifamily complexes or individual homeowners, they might not have those associated with it, but in your, like a lot of your commercial parking lots are potentially going to have these screens.
And sorry, Dana? Do you
So
have-
we could have these screens all over the village, depending on where these EV stations are, but
And, right, so right now we are saying that they are gonna be permitted in, let me just. Believe in all.
Not
zoning dis-
residential
Yeah,
districts now.
they're not in residential.
And non-residential zone.
Non-residential.
yes, but not in the, this is for the screens. For the other EV charging stations are permitted in the residential zones.
Oh, sorry, I just sounds unsightly, but okay.
Okay.
Right, which
So-
is part of the reason why.
Why we're discussing it.
Right.
So, but less expensive people putting them in, so it incentivizes them. What's the advertising laws? Because this is open, kids, everybody, right? So are they permitted to do like beer, or liquor, or cigarettes, whatever? How does that work on these sort of boards?
I mean, I'll defer to Stuart, but
We have to look into that. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't know. I know if you go into gas stations that have like
Mm-hmm.
TV screens, they're generally not advertising alcohol or anything like that, but it's just, be it news or be it something else. But I would have to find out.
Right, but those are usually 7-Elevens, and golf and stuff. They're usually managed by corporate headquarters that doesn't do that kind of stuff. But I think we'd have to have some regs in place, because if we don't, then advertising, buckets of beer for whatever is something I can envision going there, or even advertising bars. I don't know how that falls. There've been so many regs about advertising, what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. I just don't know what genre this falls into. But this is open to everybody, so anybody can see this. This is not, it's not a private thing.
Right,
So we
that's
want to be
correct.
careful with that. But, if we can lower the cost to a developer to put them in, okay, don't forget it takes up spaces. They're not all gonna wanna do it. It's a real trade-off between what they wanna do and not wanna do. But we have discussed the issue that, if you have more EV stations, especially for people who live in apartment buildings where you can't really buy an electric car today, apartment complex. It's just no place to plug them in. So, we have a lot of apartments, so condos, they could actually put them in the visitor lots. They could actually create a lot if they wanted to, they just don't. Or by their clubhouses or whatever. I think co-ops is actually the bigger problem. Not enough space. But anyway, if you could look, or Stuart, if you could look into, I think that, to your point, Dana, even if you think they're unsightly or not unsightly, what's allowed on there would be important also. Sir?
Just one quick question, just reading quickly. I'm presuming this is all external charging stations,
yes.
nothing inside.
Well, you technically, though, this is gonna allow for also EV charging stations. Level 1s and 2s are typical at this point in time in garages.
All right, I think that's something we need to dive deeper into, what's inside of a garage.
Right, so
Are you objecting to, because I mean, this is the time to tell Valerie, are you saying, keep this out of the garages, or you say
100% out of the buildings.
out of the, why, just for the EV stations, why? Are you talking about the advertising piece, or are you talking about the whole thing?
I don't care where they
EV.
advertise, it's the charging station alone should not be in a building.
are you talking about level 1, 2, and 3, or just level 3? I
I-
mean, level 3 right now, right now, we're allowing for level 1 and 2s to be in residential, all the EV level, level 1 charging stations within residential garages of 1 or 2 family dwellings and townhomes just need to conform with the residential code of New York State. And that is technically what it was, that is based off of memo that was provided by New York State to all building inspectors.
Right, but the 1 or 2 family dwellings are basically their plugs or whatever that they're putting in the garage.
Right. So then
So
for.
it's hard, how will we even catch up to what we've missed so far?
Right. So then the next level, like a building permit and electrical permit is required for the installation of all level 2 and 3 charging stations.
Right.
And then there's also requirements for all EV charging stations and all our building or structures that contain or otherwise are associated with an EV charging station are subject to the Uniform Code as well as all applicable National Fire Protection Association codes.
What about in parking garages? Or what about in,
Right, so we can, that was my, so part of my suggestion as I had for next steps is that we'd like to circulate a draft of this to both the building department and fire departments as well as the planning board for their review.
are we planning to put charging stations in the multimodal transportation hub?
That was
Yeah.
part of the discussion, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I
Is
mean,
that
so-
considered inside a building?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, because
Right.
even if
Okay.
it's open on the side, it's
Uh-huh.
still a structure, a
Right.
multi-level structure. And
But
we
Bob,
also
you
have-
don't
we
think
also
they
have
should be in the
30
building?
No,
Well,
not
he
at all.
doesn't.
Okay. The fire possibilities, right?
oh, it's a chain reaction.
Mhm.
So if something happens to your car that you're charging and Omar's car is next to it, it's just gonna keep going. And if we're inside the building, it becomes an event.
Trustee Fritchie, can you speak into the microphone, please? I'm sorry, thank you.
So it should be outside of any structure. Again, the residential's is basically not such a fancy charging station, but things go wrong. And there's plenty of videos out there to show you what can happen. I'm not against charging stations. I'm against them being inside of any structure.
That's, that's a
Well, we'll figure
trustee's
that
point
out.
of view,
We'll
yeah.
figure that out
I mean,
later.
there's been an increase in garages and the technology and all that. If we can't put charging stations, 50% of our community will never be able to buy an electric car conveniently. I mean, you have to go to the operations center down by the waterfront and pay, and nobody's gonna do that. So we have to figure it out the best way we can. But to answer your question, yes, in the multimodal, it was discussed. Don't forget that there's an E piece to it. So maybe that's where it's gonna be adjacent to that. I don't know for e-bikes, so for sure, I mean, you gotta charge it up. So that was part of the plan all along. And the thing that we saw the other night. And then there's 30 Water Street is another structure that's gonna go up because there's a 4-story, right, structure with 30 Water Street. That has been approved, but, one would think, I saw it at Phelps when I was there.
But
They
that
keep one.
has a top level to the parking garage. They could go up there.
Okay,
It's open.
so the open part is okay.
Yeah,
You're
trying to
saying
keep
there.
it from being contained.
Got it. That's probably why, well, not in White Plains. In White Plains, they have multiple next to each other. But in Phelps, they have one on each, I don't know what they're called. They go like this. Here, where's the camera? There we go. So they have one on this side, one on that, and they're far away, but they're near other cars. I mean, there's no question about it. I have to revisit that when I go there next Tuesday, because those were put in relatively recently at Phelps. So good to learn from others and see what's going on. All right, food for thought, and you said you're gonna send to the fire department. you're
Right,
gonna send
so
to the
my-
building.
right. So I'd like to, maybe start circulating the drafts and get comments back or concerns back from everybody. And then
Good.
that way we can take a look at it again.
Good.
But the regulations or the requirements in here are to a larger extent based upon, technical memos that have been sent out from New York State in terms
Okay.
of what's required. But I have heard and I've had conversations with other fire department officials that are concerned with
Mhm.
the parking garages, and
Yeah.
some are requiring it to be sprinklered, before they would allow something like that. Some are, suggesting they be located outside, or some are, as you said, are separating the.
I
different-
guess some of them are right when you come in, but they're not next to other cars. There's usually, I have to revisit,
Right.
like now that I'm aware of it, I'm gonna look and see what others have done, because some of them are relatively new and they've probably gone through this and some of them aren't. Okay, so this is stuff to think through.
Yes,
So what we have in parking garages, 30 Water, I don't recall where we're at with, the senior housing, where the nursery used to be. If there's parking in there, right? There's parking, slated for the Market Square, the multiple buildings there. Underground parking, yeah. So those are the big ones that we should just, obviously, we want to be consistent. Obviously, we should talk also to developers to see what they're doing in other locations, right? That consulting company on Monday, shouldn't they be, I'm not saying you have to send them a note, but they should tell us what they're seeing out there and improvements that are going on in this field.
THA did, I just want to make sure Jamie can hear me because she had said that she couldn't. THA actually spoke with us briefly about this a couple of weeks ago, about the need for, just as Trustee Fritchie was saying, that, you know, sort of the
Yeah.
potential for chain reaction, and they tend to over sprinkle in that case. You know, even in facilities that are not quite as enclosed, even if to your point, they have, you know, much
Right.
wider, you know, aisles and things like that. That tends to be something that THA strongly recommends, but we could of course tap them in on
Okay,
this
so,
formally.
I mean, I think it's, look,
Yeah.
we got a few structures in the next 5 years. So best time to look at it. Sorry, Jamie, I keep leaning back. Okay, Valerie, do you have enough to work with?
I
Did
do.
we do anything in this session for you?
No, this is perfect. So then
Excellent.
we'll
All
go to
good
the
input.
next steps on this. Okay.
Fabulous. Okay.
Great,
Oh,
thank you.
I have one more question. The police department, they're buying more hybrids.
Oh, yeah, we can ask.
Where is all the electric, because that's, like, I don't understand, I get like commercial, I get residential, what happened to municipal owned building? Is there like, is that a different category than everybody else? Like, didn't they ask for EV stations as well?
So
Or am
I'm
I
not sure if your
wrong?
question is for Valerie about how our municipal facilities
That's the
addressed
question in this
in this
discussion.
legislation.
Oh, so, they're
Thank
not,
you for the interpretation.
they're not specifically addressed because they're government facilities. But, you know, I would assume to a larger extent that the same type of, you know, review that the building department would do would be one that, like, if when you're gonna put in new EV charging station.
So I would just do that maybe as an addendum and a
Sure.
recommendation or best practice, because it's silly to go through all of this and then not do it ourselves and have a problem happen. That's not a good thing. Okay. We are, I think. That's the
Yeah.
issue.
Right.
That's why it needs to be addressed before, not after. That's the question. I'm sorry?
Okay,
Thank
Great.
you, Valerie.
Thank you.
Valerie, don't go too far.
No.
Well, it's really
So-
the Valerie and Stewart team, I think.
Yeah.
but
Yes.
Yes.
So our next agenda item is a very exciting one. So the board had expressed an interest in maybe taking another look at the zoning in the, you know, a very, very discrete and specific neighborhood, which is the SPN zone, which is basically the bottom of Secor and Water Street. So you can see the map up on the screen of exactly the very small area that we're discussing here. In Valerie's memo, she also has included a chart just under the map. Jamie, I know Jamie's having a little bit of a delay with her keyboard. There are only a couple dozen parcels in this neighborhood. And Valerie and her team have gone through and sort of identified how each parcel is being used currently. So we really have a good understanding of what's happening now. Particularly as, you know, downtown is seeing a lot of development. We've started to get more interest in this area in particular. We know that the neighborhood is likely to have some strong feelings about what they'd like to see here, and we know that the board has as well. So really the purpose of this particular agenda item is not to talk about what those recommendations may be, but just to let the board know what it is that we're planning, and get your feedback on what that's going to be. We have been working with one of the businesses in the neighborhood, which is Here Coffee, to schedule a pop-up engagement there. And so Valerie, do you want to sort of talk about what the
Sure.
nature of that might look like?
Yeah, so the thought is we identified June 6th from 2 to 8 p.m. That seems to be like peak times within that within that business. And so the thought is we're going to basically take feedback on a number of different topics. First, dealing with like future development. So we were going to provide information, you know, we'll do this on board so people can come and go as they please. And you know, we're going to provide information so that the neighborhood can understand the current land uses, as well as get their feedback on the types of like styles, in terms of like massing. So we basically would provide images of different building types and kind of get their feedback as to what they would want to see within the neighborhood. And then also get some information from the community in terms of parking as well, because I know that's something else it's, you know, has been discussed a lot at this board in terms of, do they want to see parking on site? Are they okay with like, having, additional development with parking on the street? Or do they want to see, so a couple different options for their consideration. And then we're also going to focus on, then we'll kind of pivot and talk a little bit about and get their feedback on the streetscaping project that's also going to take place down there, and get a sense of what would they like to see as part of that streetscaping project in terms of like street furniture, landscaping, amenities, that type of thing. And then the last is the focus on the solar project, right? So it's basically not necessarily to take feedback on that, but to provide information to the neighborhood as to what's coming up, and if they have any questions that we'd be able to answer those. So the thought is to kind of, incorporate all this. And then once we get some feedback from the neighborhood and also people that, like frequent that area, then we'll be able to come back to this board with, I think, a little bit more defined types of suggestions for zoning changes within that area, as well as the streetscaping project.
Okay, let me go to my left for questions and comments.
The one question, is there a timeline on the solar project down there yet?
That's Matt.
Yes. So we have biweekly meetings with them. And when I say we, it's typically me, Karen, Jamie, Paul, and our building inspector, Joe Augustinelli. So we're getting very close. We're still targeting the week after the Independence Day fireworks celebration for them to break ground. What we're waiting for right now, and what Valerie and her team are very patiently waiting for, is sort of a construction timeline, so we can let folks know with as much certainty as is possible. These are the parking spots that are going to be unavailable to you between week 1 and week 3. Then these, we're going to be able to unlock as we move on to the next phase. And also specifically being able to show folks what area is going to be closed off and what's still going to be open to traffic. So that's something that they've committed to sharing with us before close of business on Friday, which hopefully we'll be able to include with plenty of time in the boards that Valerie was just talking about.
Thank you.
Manny?
Thank you. I guess my question, I'm looking at the agenda that you have for
Yeah.
June 6th.
Yes.
Is just one session that you guys are thinking of doing? Because this is a Thursday from 2 o'clock to 8 p.m.
Yes.
Sure. And for me, it's just not enough time for people to get to that if it starts at 2 o'clock. Sure. A lot of people in that area, there are working families.
Right.
So having a 2 o'clock session, it kind of deviates from having a lot of people, and maybe by the time they get there, it's not going to be enough time for you guys to answer some of the questions. So
Yeah, so and we're not, it's not, you don't have to, it's really whenever you have time, right? So there is no specific, we'll be there from 2 o'clock. And then when I say 8 o'clock, I think they close, Here Coffee and Beer closes at 10. So we won't like pack up if people are still coming in and like asking questions.
why Thursday?
Well, because we figured we didn't think a weekend you wouldn't capture some of the commuters, right? And some of the other people that utilize that area. And then we figured Mondays and Fridays typically are not great days for people, so we picked a Thursday. I don't know if you have a preference on a
When,
Tuesday or Wednesday, but some of it
Yeah.
conflicts with other
My
boards.
feeling is there's never a good day.
Right.
And somehow there's always, every day is a good day,
I mean,
depends who you want to
we could have
capture.
more than one session
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
prefer.
But just give me 1 second. Omar, when we did that update for the comp plan, you recall, because we did some of the stuff down there as well. We think the days that we chose were on the weekends, and we got a pretty good crowd on some of the stuff that we did there, correct?
Yes, that was a Saturday morning
Yeah.
that we did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So to me, it's I get the commuters, but the commuters, I want to say, not all the commuters live there.
No, I
I think
realize that.
the target for me is the people that actually live there, so maybe Thursday, try, see what the outcome is, if there's not enough feedback, I think we have to look back and kind of try time. So another date, during maybe on the weekends that we can try a different time frame. I think that hopefully will help. Just having one, I don't think is gonna be enough.
Okay,
Right, so we can, I mean, if the
Could look
board
at
is,
it.
yeah,
I mean, weekends are pretty busy there.
right.
You get a lot of people in, with kids and, it's, but you may have less room to do your thing. I mean, I don't know. It's up to the people who own the business, obviously, if they want that there. but-
It doesn't have to be there. It could be anywhere, and it could be in another place. If
Right.
they're not,
Oh, yeah,
it doesn't
okay.
have to be in that specific
Mhm.
place, sure. I mean,
okay.
there's
So
a
I
lot of
think
couple
Valerie
places
said
there.
yes already, so we'll figure that out, right?
Yeah,
If you have
No
the weather,
questions?
if you
No.
have the weather, you could set something out in the parking lot.
What
too.
about the train station? Oh, that's not true.
Okay, can we, like, instead of deciding this part of it, can we just agree that there'll be that day, 2 to 8, maybe even longer, and then another day,
Yeah, we
possibly a
can do-
weekend,
yes,
that you
we can
guys
do
will
a
figure
weekend.
out?
Yeah.
You're gonna do a pop-up, you look at the weather, you could do it right outside here, coffee, there are 2 benches right there. Stick up a tent, do it up by the market square, whatever, just I mean, I think that, you guys just got, like, let's figure that one out. Everybody's in agreement. Dana, anything about the engagement piece that you want to add to? I hope that some of the folks from your committee will be there. The placemaking, I saw a couple of them today. Oma, any other?
Yeah, so I like this a lot. I appreciate the translations available in Spanish as well, always. I wonder if there is the possibility to have a digital option. So to say, we're going to do a Zoom session on Saturday morning, for example. It could be during an evening, but whatever the time is, and you have essentially the same kind of information, but digital equivalents. So you can have polls on Zoom. You can kind of whiteboard information. There are different websites that you can use that
Mhm.
where you can have folks engage with essentially kind of vote on things or kind of put dots on maps. And
Right.
I'm happy to share what some of those are as well. But that may be a way for people to participate in a more concentrated way that's digital if they have like childcare issues or mobility issues, and they can still get their voice heard.
Right, so is that a third option, like a Thursday 2 to 8, a weekend of some sort, and then a third option, which is Zoom?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so, and I think what's important here,
Yeah.
I think what's important here, and I'm only looking at Valerie because you're talking, I could be looking at anybody, is that as we go project by project by project, community center, even if it's not the whole community center, there might be a big chunk. This could set a template, like those 8 sessions did for 30 Water Street.
Right.
I don't know if 8 was the right, maybe we could have done it in 6, maybe it could have been 12, I don't know. But I think you learn with each one. And the fact that they're recorded, which is what's nice about Zoom, that we don't have with the other 2 options, is the ability people not only to participate, but then also to look retroactively at it and say, oh, okay, I wasn't there, but now I see the question that they had. It's worth on this first round, not because this is the most important topic, but because this is to get some learning for future pieces, which we will have. So comment on the conversations, but, and also for me personally. So I think it's really important. It's like everything in marketing is to know who the users are and who the clients are, who the benefactors are, etc. So we tend to look at neighborhoods, like the people in that neighborhood own that neighborhood. You know, the street in front of my house is mine. Yeah, it's actually not. It belongs to the public. You know, the stop sign, I can go and cut and put things up there because it's mine. It's nice that you think of your neighborhood, but no. So I love that people think of neighborhoods, but the reality of it is it's not theirs. Theirs is their property. Outside their property is where they have input, is residents, businesses, etc. The thing about that neighborhood, especially, is that probably half the commuters use that on a regular basis. And anything we do there affects them as much as it does the person who's living in a house that they own there. Also, there are people that own many things down there, but they haven't lived there in a long time. It's a lot of renters who we don't hear from very much at all. So you have different constituencies there. I'd love to figure out a way to understand that and to capture that. Because a person who owns a brick building there with 6 or 10 tenants may have a different point of view of what should happen then the 6 to 8 family tenants who live there short-term or long, doesn't matter to me, and how things should look. I would love to find a way as a challenge to have, especially, not especially there are many areas downtown that are like that. Market Square is going to be like that. Market Square doesn't belong to the people right at Market Square. Frankly, the entire community uses it at some point or another during the week. The businesses who don't live, businesses don't live here anymore. The employees of those businesses, half of whom don't live here, but they're part of our constituents. They're part of the mix that it's important to hear from them. So I think that's another challenge, is to make sure that the people that we're listening to are as wide a group, not as narrow of a group. So I actually think commuters are especially important because they actually don't get asked as much about stuff like that. It doesn't matter to me that they live in a different part of town. They're driving through there and they probably go to hear coffee and all that. We have people coming off the train who use that area. I don't know how the heck you're gonna capture them, but either maybe on a Saturday or something if they're around. So I'd love to set that template up and understand that that area has, you know, yes, it's a neighborhood, but and it's gonna have 30 Water Street with all new people
Right.
coming in. So it's totally gonna change. So let's see what we can do to capture a wide scope, which I think is different than the comprehensive plan. So when Manny mentioned the comprehensive plan, I love the idea that it's on a weekend. But the comprehensive plan is really designed for people who actually are here. Downtown, the parks and all that are for people beyond the people that live right there. So let's see where we can go with it and how we use that. It's a big challenge, I think.
To
We've expanded the entire thing there.
to add specifics, so there are 3 platforms that I'll recommend. One is Miro, Miro. Another is Mural, Mural, and the third is Concept Board, all one word. But all of them allow you to upload images or PDFs or maps as backgrounds, and people can kind of stick sticky notes or dots or whatever. It has multi-language support, analytics. So you can either do it in a concentrated way that's synchronous, to say we're going to have a session from 7 to 8 on Thursday, and then you give the link there, or you can have a QR code or something that says, hey, take a picture of this right before you get on the train. And while you're on the train and you're commuting, you can give your input on this, particular thing. So you can say it's going to be open from now for the next week, and then people can submit their thoughts.
We've done stuff with like Survey 123, where you can actually go onto individual maps and identify specific areas or locations. So that's like a survey type of thing. I know like Zoom has like the whiteboard, and it also has some of those other elements similar to what you're talking about. And we've also done like breakout groups and stuff like that. It just depends on how, I can talk to Karen and Maddie about like, different options and that we might want to consider. But yeah, we can definitely do something like that.
Yes, yeah, I think so Teams has it and Zoom, those are more set up for like this. We have a relatively small group of people that are working collaboratively. These tools are better, they can work like this, but they can also be used by dozens or hundreds of people simultaneously, and you can handle that kind of input.
Right.
Love the optimism of hundreds.
I think also
Love the
our
optimism.
plan is to try to get like as much targeted feedback as possible for people that actually like really utilize that area. In terms of either living there or commuting there or something, just so that, because if you ask village-wide, you might get a very different response versus people that are dealing with the everyday issues or concerns that they might have.
Right, so that was my comment.
Yes.
You have to be very careful about your target audience.
Exactly.
Because what you just said is too narrow for me,
Okay.
okay? So they may suffer for the litter that's created or the parking, but the people who actually use that environment may live in a whole different part of Austining. I'm not talking about other places, I'm talking Austining. So we just have to sort of state the targeted groups, because it will drive everything else.
Right. Okay.
So just give that some thought. And well, the team, I'm looking at Valerie, but obviously you guys understand it's the whole team, because that'll be important. Okay,
Oh, sorry,
Oh,
can I just
more?
ask one question? Yeah, so this is all fantastic. Just have one question.
Sure.
What is your plan to outreach? How do you outreach in them?
What do
Are
mean?
you advertising?
Oh,
this,
so
that this
yeah,
is gonna
so
be
I mean,
taking
well, that's
place?
the next thing. Well, I was, we were thinking about, just internally, I mean, we have to still talk about that. But there's things simple as like just putting flyers, like, average, like right around that area, so that as people are passing by, they can see that, oh, these events are gonna come up. So we're gonna wanna identify not just only the June 6th, but all the different options. And then some of it could be like some sort of direct mailings, and then if we wanna go even larger, we can put some stuff on social media and also specifically on the website and stuff like that as well.
So you're gonna have a little communication plan? Because that's not really Valerie's thing. That's your thing and Jamie's thing.
Right, that's true.
So mayor's message, social media, ask
Right.
your coffee to put it on their social media and other people down there.
Your
And,
coffee is real psyched about
Yeah.
this. They're very excited.
and
about
how
it.
do we get to the commuters? That's something to think about. And what else is down there? The folks who live at Westerly, who walk over and use all of that and park whatever. Maybe something in the building, community center, but I leave that to you. Just create like a list and let's figure out how we can get to all these things.
Right.
That you can charge your EV right into.
I mean, and part of it will be just having people kind of walk, like an advertisement outside, so people as they're walking by just can kind of come in, and that's part of why we did it as not a specific time. So if somebody can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long they'd like.
Yeah, I think a poster, some sort of posters,
Yeah.
especially for the commuters when they walk, not to the MTA property, but something along those lines where the people is visualized for them, so something can see it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, moving right along on a couple of big projects. Can we take a 5-minute break or 3-minute break?
Of course.
Okay. Is that all right with everybody?
Mhm.
Okay. Jamie, taking a 3-minute break.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everyone turn their microphones off?
No, I have my microphone on.
Because I can still hear people.
On and. Oh, I see.
Mayor, can you mute your microphone, please?
All right. All ready?
All right.
I feel like there should be more people here, but it's just us, huh? Small crowd. All right, Jamie, are we back on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okie dokie.
All right, our next agenda item, Valerie is still with us, but she's going to be joined by Stuart for this one. This agenda item is also very exciting because it's a very long time coming. The board knows better than anybody that this has been a very long process. This is an incredible foothold that the board has made. This is basically, we talked about the buckets of zoning changes, right? So things that the village and this board and boards before you, I'm quite sure, have been looking at for quite some time. Things as simple as updating definitions to things a little bit more complex. So I will turn it over to Valerie and Stuart. All of the changes are in the agenda, and I believe there's nothing new to report except for what the planning board weighed in on most recently, which was the changes to the parking tables. So I will turn it over to these folks.
Yeah, so basically the planning board supported the changes to the parking tables. So at this point, I have come to previous work sessions to talk about recommendations from the planning board. So all those recommendations have been received by this board and have been discussed. And I'm going to turn it over to Stuart because he's been working on the local laws for this, but basically everything that we have attached to the agenda tonight, you have reviewed and in previous work sessions.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, folks. It is a lengthy proposed local law because it basically changes many of our definitions. And it also adopts what this board had wanted to do with regard to livable space. Those numbers have been changed. So the tables at the end of the zoning chapter are therefore changed. What we've done, and really this is thanks to Valerie, is that we've basically taken all the definitions and put them at the very front of the chapter. So where we before, for the overlay districts, had about 20 definitions, those are now part of the main definition section. Where we defined different uses, those are now all, again, at the front. So if someone wants to look, they can see exactly what that is. Then they can go and look at the uses to see, different types of uses that are there. Which we did before, for example, if you remember, we did in terms of cannabis, when we did growing and cultivation, that was already something that we did before. It's just going to get carried over here. But we have many new, so I guess it's fair to say, if I were to say it, most of the definitions that now appear in the new section 270-4 actually are already in the code, but in other parts of the code. We've just shifted them over. There are a number of new definitions, which are basically based upon either the uniform code or other code sections dealing with certain uses that we had not, for example, defined before. So that way it makes it simpler for people to know what things are. But so what this is essentially moving things around, plus putting some new things in. Although it's lengthy in terms of the local law, ultimately it will be much shorter because a lot of what is in here is going to get basically cut out. As I said, there will be parts of the overlay districts that will come out. One new thing that will go in, which is not in here, will be the Croton Gorge overlay district when that's ultimately adopted by this board. But what these are essentially definitional changes, changes with regard primarily to livable space, and also with regard to parking, which were the main areas that the board wanted. So those are all done. The tables in the back are there. We did put in new things relating to home occupations major, home occupations minor, and where it's permitted, where it's conditional, where it's not permitted. So that's all in there based upon what this board wanted to do. All of this, as Valerie said, went to the planning board. And so it's in this point, it will ultimately go, I guess, to the county for their review. They'll come back, but unless there are, if we're here for any comments that the board may have with regard to all these changes.
Okay, I'm gonna go to my right. What am I right this time? Start
We're gonna
off?
start with me?
Okay, or not.
Well, what am I, there's a lot here.
It's a 128 page
There's a lot
document.
here. Is there anything?
He just
We
went
haven't-
through the synopsis.
No.
No, that's one important thing that Valerie mentioned. There's nothing that's here that was not previously discussed. That includes the changes to the tables, changes to the bulk tables, changes to the parking tables. All of that was discussed before. What Valerie provided you with was basically the overview. It had to be put into the form of a local law, so that's why it's lengthy here. But all of this was, there's nothing new here that was not discussed before. There was one thing that didn't get pulled over, it's now been pulled over, and that was just, I think, in terms of growing facility or something like that. It just got missed the first time around. But otherwise, everything that you have discussed before is now within this local law.
So I was looking at the definitions, and accessory structure and accessory use are being added, right?
They are new terms, that is correct, they are new terms.
They're not added as part of the village. They're terms.
They're
that are being
terms,
added.
but are they being added in anticipation of being needed, or that's just,
Well, we actually have accessory uses in our code now.
Yeah.
we do,
We
okay.
have a whole provision for that, but it's not been a defined term. So now it
Okay.
will actually be defined, but accessory is
Okay,
a particular section within the village code,
okay.
the zoning code.
Do we have anything about, bed and breakfast? Do we have anything about, extended stay or, Airbnb types of things?
No, we did not. That was something that the board decided to not move forward with at this point in time.
Okay, thanks.
You're good? Bob?
Good.
Annie?
Thank you. Valerie, thank you, and Stuart, thank you, because I know it's a lot of coordination that you guys have to do in there. Quick question, Stuart. You sent an email out early to us in regards to some of the definitions itself, and I was looking at the amend use classifications, which also has some definitions in there on our website, and some of the stuff was, I want to say, missing from the email that you sent us in regards to. You sent us early today at 12:45 an email in regards to the chapter 270 in definitions, zoning definitions, correct?
I sent you the proposed local law.
Yeah. Well, it has the definition. It's part of the definitions in here.
Correct.
Okay, so but the definitions of the use, a difference between that definitions that we have in here on our website.
Definitions use group were taken from the section 270-4B, essentially
Okay.
that language.
Stuart, can you please turn on your microphone?
That language was
Thank you.
taken from there and moved to 270-4A.
Okay, the reason I was asking is because there's you on the one on the local law that you have, which is I think I was actually glad to see that it was that administrative variances that we passed our law a couple years back. So that was part of that here. I guess some of the definitions I was glad to see that, which is, again, it was not coordinated. Maybe there's a reason why I didn't see some of that stuff that was on the definition groups of the groups itself, which is very similar stuff. I guess my question to you on the amendment for the zoning definitions that you have in here, there's a spot that you have about basement, and basement is cited in 2 sections. Was that a particular reason why was that?
When we cited it.
You have a basement, you have a definition of a basement in one section, which was updated, which is highlighted, is bolted and is underlined, short.
Right.
And then underneath that, you have bed and breakfast, you have basic districts, and then you have, underneath that, you have
And
basements.
that definition.
So
the other
that one is
definition
being taken out. Okay, so that one is taken out. Okay, usually you've been crossing some of the stuff out, so I wasn't sure.
We don't do crossouts here.
Okay.
We do
You
brackets.
do, yeah.
We do brackets.
So Valerie, define build to lot, define build to line. I'm reading this, I'm
So
just trying to understand that better.
That is taken from your overlay, the new overlay that you adopted a few years ago, so we just moved that over. So in terms of that specifically deals with the overlay district of your downtown and Croton Avenue.
Okay, so if I looked at the overlay portion of that,
It'll
be able to
refer
go
to a
back-
bill to
refer back
line,
to line.
yeah, and
Got it.
it's usually, it's a form-based code,
Okay.
terminology.
Got it. All right, thank you. In regards to that, you have the both tables, table in, let me see what the heck was it? So this one, there was a table where we remove, living spaces. was it?
Habitable area.
No, not that one. Work and live.
Live well.
Live work, yes.
Work. So
Yeah.
we remove that totally, but we are defining that as an accessory to, what?
No, so we eliminated that because it was too similar in terms of, it was causing conflicts with the building department and the, it was a recommendation from the building inspector and the planning board attorney. Because to some extent, you know, you can technically have a live work apartment and just, it's like a studio apartment, right? You don't necessarily have to have that specific definition. So if that definition was confusing, it really wasn't being utilized, and so it was suggested just to remove it.
Okay. But then we added the category, the last two, that's two I was talking about. Just let me bring that up. Of course, it's not that one. Oh, home occupancy major and minor. So those are the definitions that you're referring to before, correct?
That's correct. That's what we put it in now.
Right.
Okay, so define major and minor for me in occupancy, home occupancy itself, please. And why was that added to the accessory use itself?
I think this was a work session discussion that we had a number of months ago, so I think Stuart can read the two, but I think we decided, we went through the current home occupations that you had in the zoning, and then we talked about trying to modernize them based upon current situations that are happening now, especially working remotely. And just to make sure that, you know, there's certain caveats that working remotely is allowed versus, you know, actually having a home-based business that becomes, you know, much more intensive. So we do have some new recommendations, regulations, and definitions associated with them.
And I remember that part, and please forgive me, was this part of when you went to the planning board and the members and they discussed this as well? That was
Yes.
part of the recommendation, so they're okay with this
That's correct.
as well? Okay,
That's correct.
all right, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Great. Well, thank you, Manny, because that the major and minor I'm using, but now I understand the context of that. So there have been definitions. One of the most complicated one, ironically, is the use of the word family. What
Right.
concept we had, I'm sure we'll be having that for hours. We'll write a thesis when we're done, because I think it's complicated, but from a legal perspective, you always have to have parameters. And if you can't find a parameter, it's a problem for the lawyers, for the judges, for the enforcement, for everything. So I just want to put the context again for this project. This is a separate project from the stuff we work on. But I don't even know how long ago it was. One could argue a dozen years ago, one could argue 5 years ago, one could argue a year ago. At different intervals, we've talked about redoing the codes. They're complicated, they're convoluted, they're patchwork from year to year with different boards. But one of the, and we came down with 3 buckets, and one of them is the definitions at least should be consistent. Because, you know, when a judge looks at it, or a land use lawyer looks at it, or a tenant lawyer looks at it, or a building lawyer looks at it, they all have to be on the same page. And they'll look at a definition on 2 different pages of the same book, and it will be defined differently. And they're gonna look at definition that suits their needs. And then our boards are stuck in this very awkward position. So it's a huge project. We thought it would take 3 to 4 years. We put a budget to it. So again, just for the memorialization, that's what this project is about, is to, I don't want to, I mean, maybe streamline, I don't know. And while we were doing this, definitions changed. The whole work at home thing, you know, having a dentist office with people coming and going is very different than sitting at your laptop 2 to 4 days a week working for a firm in Iowa, when you're sitting in a room somewhere. But they're both people who work from the house environment. And Dana, again, the accessory thing in both the comp plan, the board did not approve the way the town did for accessory apartments. But the concept of an accessory unit is a definition. There's actually needs to be in layman's term definition. So this is about definitions so that we're all on the same page. So now so I just want to put context because I always feel a year from now, somebody's going to look at this video or the next mayor is going to look at it or whatever's going to happen. And new people that come to work here, so they should get the context. Maybe I should have started with this more clearly rather than end with it. I do have a question though. So there are different people that use all the codes, right? All the lawyers that represent all the different people. Our attorneys, our own lawyers with the different boards, our board members, like all the volunteer boards, the judges how are we telling them that this project, this bucket, the definitions have been redone, short of just expecting them to look at it? Because a lot of them get used to certain things, right? They're used to defining things a certain way. How can we improve the communication, or what is the communication, since I don't actually know how this works? Oh, I'll look at Stuart for this.
Well, planning board knows about it.
Right.
We'll certainly let the zoning board know, the building department knows. To be honest, I have in the past sent revised laws to the court. I have received nothing back, not received even a thank you. So my view is they get it themselves a copy of the local law. And if it ever comes up, we'll let them know that it's been changed.
So when these new definitions come in, you're going to send them a note that says this project has been done. These are the changes. Thank you very much.
We'll certainly notify the zoning board. We can send it to the court. I will say this, most of these changes don't directly affect what goes on in the court, because the court is generally dealing more with property maintenance issues.
Okay.
They don't deal with as many zoning. There are zoning violations, but not as many.
Okay.
But we do make them aware, and I know that they are one of the groups that get copies of
Good.
whatever.
Well, I didn't know that. So that's good. And the police doesn't need any of this, right? This has nothing to do.
Not for this. They do not.
Because this is a lot of, it's not really changes, it's a streamline, but still,
Right.
you finished a project, somebody should know about it, right?
Right.
I mean, it's an opportunity for education and with an explanation that this is a project and please look at it. And maybe it'll help somebody. Otherwise, people sort of show up. People get very used to doing things in a specific way. I think it's great. Does this actually, what do you need from us tonight? Who am I looking at?
Actually, nothing tonight, because
Yeah.
what we're planning to do is, it'll get sent to the county. We'll do the environmental secret documents. It'll come back from the county. When it comes back from the county, we can then schedule this for a public hearing, because it'll be a local law. And then after that, after the public hearing, the board can vote to adopt. So
Okay, so only the county, not the state.
yes, this goes right.
Okay, and fantastic, like bucket, I forgot.
Yes,
my
and
number.
I'll update you because actually the board has actually moved forward with a lot of items on the bucket lists. So I will, I'll send an update memo to the board so that you can see all the different updates you've done to the village code since the beginning and since we talked about the 3 different buckets.
Great, and is there anything in there, not that I saw it, but maybe you guys do, that the EAC should be notified of it? I know they don't make decisions and you're not asking them for approval, but we have now learned that they're very active, and if there's something they should see, then please, let's make sure they do.
Yeah,
We'll certainly get them a copy. There's not a problem.
yeah, and we also, if you recall, the board recommended or requested that we reach out to all the boards and give them drafts while these were under review. So we did do that to all the chairs.
All right, so now there's a follow-up says, okay,
Right.
went from the board, it was approved by planning,
Exactly.
last chance for anybody to say anything. I think getting input on a big project like this, almost you can't have too much.
Right,
I think that's fair.
great. All right.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
Although when I think of bucket list, this is not my concept of a bucket list, but okay, I'm gonna have to like, get excited about this versus like to see Alaska someday. All right, what do you got?
All right, last but not least, I am going to be sharing what I hope is a relatively quick, but meaningful, downtown parking update. So
Okay.
Jamie, if you could bring up the Prezi, please. I've asked Valerie if she wouldn't mind staying for a couple minutes, because some of the things that I'm gonna be talking about are thanks in part to the hard work of Valerie and her team. So it's only right that she be here with us for this. So this is the format of our downtown parking presentations that you've seen a few times before. So this sort of harkens back to what we had originally called the 2022 downtown parking plan. And so this goes back quite a ways. We were very optimistic about how fast we'd be able to move, but you know, that's a shame on me, I suppose. So 2020
20 years. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking a couple of years can't be that bad.
2022 was when we started rolling out the findings from the Nelson Nygaard study. So a lot of this should look very familiar to the board and then also to the public. But in Nelson Nygaard's study, there were 5 categories of intervention that they asked us to consider. So expanding the parking supply, expanding parking capacity, managing parking demand, improving operational effectiveness, and improving alternate mobility options and wayfinding. So Jamie, if you go to the next slide. Oh, nope, that's backwards. I'm sorry. You just click on the complete. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So we have actually made a decent amount of headway. In terms of expanding the parking supply, there were 2 things that we've really accomplished here. The first, and again, thanks to Valerie and Stewart's hard work, was adding the in lieu of parking fund to the village code. And we have a couple folks who at least have been contemplating using that in the last couple of weeks. So they will be the first. We also have explored redevelopment of the Main and Spring Street site. You can see the rendering upper right-hand corner is the most recent that we have, unfortunately. So we're looking to pick up that project in earnest again very soon. In terms of expanding parking capacity, one of the recommendations was to remove free daytime parking in what is basically the post office lot and Market Square lot. I know that that's something we'll be talking about a little bit later in this presentation, but that is something that we have done. Further, adding village-owned daily spots at the train station. That's something that we have done, and I think it's been quite successful. Again, that's that smaller lot off of Quimby Street. We have 32 spaces there where folks can pay through the app $4.75 a day if they don't want to invest in a long-term commuter parking permit through the village. Improving operational effectiveness, use of vehicle-mounted plate readers. We are almost up and running again on the vehicle mounted, but currently we're using the handheld ones to enforce not only our passport paid parking, but also our municipal tags and our commuter tags, and it's going very well. And then renaming our municipal parking lots. You can see 2 of the signs on the left-hand side, thanks to the folks at DPW, specifically Mr. Velardo, who really has jumped in to help us with all of these various and sundry parking projects. So you'll now see at the entrance to all of our parking lots a very clear label of where it is that you are. This will come back around in just one moment. And then as far as alternative mobility, this is sort of an ongoing project. So Jamie and I and Karen, along with the town of Ossining, work every year with 501 New York Rideshare to do car free, a variety of other initiatives. There's a lot of other things we're looking into for the long term. As far as what's pending now, you see I have some little jumpy arrows. Those are the things that we're going to be talking about mainly this evening. So under expanding parking supply, one is creating more employee parking opportunities in downtown. We'll circle back to that in a moment. The other is the multimodal transportation hub, which we talked about briefly earlier tonight. Basically, for those who have not been following us closely, the plan is to, on the Brandreth parking lot, which you can see in the photo or the aerial on the upper left, is a parking lot of about 60 parking spaces right now. That is thanks and help to funds from the DRI and from ESD. Be a multimodal parking hub, which among having parking spaces will also include EV charging and an e-bike rental facility. So nestled right into that space along the aqueduct. Expand parking capacity, again, converting the downtown spots to paid. We'll get back to that in just a minute. Managing parking demand to align the meter hours with demand. We'll get back to that as well. Improve operational effectiveness. So this wasn't necessarily a suggestion, but it's something that I know we've been working on for a very long time. And again, thanks to Valerie and her team, we have finally gotten there. So you can see the image on the right-hand side. Jamie, I don't know if you can click on it to zoom a little bit. But basically, this is our interactive parking map. It is not live yet because I'm still playing with it, but you can see right now the blue sections are our municipal lots. And if you hover over each one, it'll give you sort of an infographic about what the rules are in that parking lot. So the next step, once we're comfortable with where this is at, is to add the train station and also our hardship streets. So that it's going to be a larger project for sure. But now that we know how to do it, it should be. No worries.
Spanish?
That's a good question. Yeah. Yeah, this is relatively late breaking, but we were just very excited because I think it's been
Yeah.
probably a few years that the board has been curious about being able to activate this. So very exciting. Jamie, if you could mosey on back. And then the last one, which we won't be talking about tonight, is Project Mover. The board's gotten an update on that relatively recently. So we should be seeing those bikes hitting the road in the next couple of months. Jamie, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, coming soon. Awesome. Okay. So, one of the things that we've heard, and I'm sure the board has also heard quite a bit about, is probably the most major change that was suggested by the folks at Nelson Nygaard, which is to start charging for parking in the surface parking lots in our downtown. So you can see on the top graphic, it's not really important to zoom in. Basically, we have the Market Square all the way to the right-hand side where you see the red star. There's 25 parking spaces there. And then on the other side of the street, I think it's 59 split between the two sides of what we call the post office parking lot. So the first step that we took, which we had been talking to the board throughout 2022, and for a variety of reasons we delayed getting into, was charging for parking in these two areas. So the general rule is that between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m., you have to pay, and you can only pay as of right this moment through the app. From 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., you can use your municipal night permit, which is for sale through the clerk's office. And then between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., it's free parking for all. Well, as you can imagine, we've heard about this program that we rolled out on January 1st. I will say there has been a lot of really good feedback. We have heard from some folks who have said, I don't like this at all, but we have heard from many more folks who have said, I like where you're going. Have you considered this? So that's what we're doing right about now. So Jamie, if you can click on the yellow dot, please. So there are three things that we're working on for the next, let's say, 2 months. The first one is our parking pay stations. So if you can click on that orange circle, please. So these puppies are coming to Ossining probably next week. Basically what we're looking at here, and these might look a little familiar because I had given a presentation back in, I think, 2020 about something similar. Right now, we have invested in 2 multi-space parking kiosks. You can see the photographs on the upper right. Again, you don't need to zoom, but these are the locations that we've scattered out with Paul Fraioli, our village engineer, as well as DPW. You can see the one on, again, the right side of the screen, but the photo on the left is sort of an enlarged ADA accessible island. Nope. You click, okay, there you go. So that is constructed by DPW for the express purpose of housing this pay station. So basically you see the little the ADA ramp with the bumps. So that is how folks are going to approach the kiosk. That space was not actually a parking space to begin with. That was my first question. So that is going to be sort of candlesticked off so that, you know, to sort of protect the safety of folks who are using the kiosk. So we had originally thought we were just going to do the one. After a lot of feedback that we got, including from our very own folks in parking enforcement, it made a lot more sense to do 2. So we were able to purchase a second one, which is going to be installed across the street at Market Square. Luckily, both of these were available on, I believe it was a Sourcewell contract, so we were able to get a very competitive rate. So Jamie, if you can go away from the zoom in. Oh, no. There you go. So these are going to be pay by plate. They're going to use the same zones that we use for the passport payment app. It's in English and Spanish. They're solar powered. We're going to have a few batteries on the shelf just in case something happens, but they send, regular alerts to let us know the status of the batteries. Again, due to a lot of feedback that we got, we want to be able to accept not only coin, but also cash in these kiosks. So we're going to have to make sure that we're well trained on what we need to do in order to collect and to maintain. And the best part is that they integrate very seamlessly with not only the passport app, but also the company that we use for parking enforcement and those handhelds. So basically what will happen is if you go up to the kiosk, you'll type in, or there'll be two big buttons on the screen. You'll push the button for the zone that you're in. It'll ask you for your license plate number. It'll say, how long do you want to stay and how would you like to pay? It'll also accept if you want to do contactless, so you can hold your phone up to take Apple or Google Pay. And it should be pretty simple. It can provide either a printed receipt if you want it just for your records, or I believe we opted for an email or text receipt, or no receipt at all. Jamie has been very helpful in helping me imagine some signage. We want to make sure that we have some sort of directional signage for folks who might be on the other side of the parking lot that may need to know exactly where it is that they're going. These areas are pretty well lit, so I imagine people shouldn't have a problem finding them, but just to make sure. And then also once they are installed, we can add little insignias on the interactive parking map to show people exactly where the pay stations are in the parking lots in case there is any confusion. So as of yesterday, they're still planning to be here next week. The installation is part of the contract. DPW will be on site to make sure all goes well. After we have a little bit of training for not just myself, but also the folks in DPW and parking, we're looking to put them in service. I don't want to overpromise, but hopefully early June. So we're really excited about this. Jamie, if you can go to the next orange bubble, please. Okay. Zone 91418 is something that this board has already approved. This was in response to some of the feedback that we got from some of the businesses specifically about, well, what happens about folks who need to get here very early in the morning, or for folks who maybe are having a meal and need to stay past 8 o'clock at night, because otherwise they would have to have a permit to be in that parking lot. So this is something that the board has already authorized. Basically, it's a little bank of 8 spots. You can see where they are with the arrows in the upper left. That's basically going to be all metered all the time. So not someplace that you would have to move your car if in fact you were staying late for dinner, or if you had to come in early to work at one of our stores that opens a little bit earlier in the morning. The caveat here is that they will have a max stay of 4 hours. We're actually able to set in the app that it can lock you out after a certain amount of time. And that's good news, because we can have people stay for 4 hours and then they got to go. So we can make sure that those spots will continue to move over. And that's something that we'll talk about for some other parking spots a little bit later in the presentation. But this is something that, again, has been asked for by some of the businesses, and we think is probably a good idea. Go to the next one, please. Another thing that this board has already discussed and approved is employee parking. So you see the photographs on the left-hand side that's coming up Central Avenue. We had put into the code, I believe Stuart called it a linear parking lot. This is along Central Avenue. So coming all the way from the bottom, you have 21 lined spaces on the right-hand side. This is right up against the 30 Water Street site. Then when you get to sort of the curve in the top of the hill is where we sort of hit a snag. As the board may remember, we used to allow short-term parking along the side of Central Avenue right up top. Unfortunately, because of some activity that's going on there, we had to move it across the street, and now we can't have it at all. But based on some of the feedback that we've gotten, folks really would like to see this sooner than later. So we're going to be able to put into play the employee parking is going to be, for now, the 21 spaces at the bottom of the hill. So that is we're going to try to get up and running in the next couple of weeks. Basically, anyone per the code who works in a business in that specific area, as put out in legislation, would be able to apply for a very, very, very low cost permit, which we would either put into the handhelds or put on their dashboard. First come, first serve, and those would be like 8-hour parking spots. So this is something that a lot of other communities have used for people who work in downtown businesses, are going to need to be there for a protracted period of time, but may not necessarily need the convenience of a close by spot, and they're willing to walk a little bit of a distance. So these are three things that we're rolling out, again, that the board has already signed off on, but we just wanted to sort of let you know that this was the timetable. Jamie, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what's next? There's some additional feedback that we've gotten from the community that we'd like the board to consider. And this is certainly something that, you know, if the board is in favor, we could develop something for you to look at a later date. But again, these are some of the more popular things that are popping out. The first one is to eliminate the 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. daily free parking. This was well-intentioned, but it has not turned out to be super helpful. Folks are saying that it's confusing to have that 2-hour window. If someone needs to go someplace at 9 o'clock, they want to prepay through the app. Our app doesn't currently allow that. It may be more trouble than it's worth for the handful of folks that are using it. So something to consider. The next, convert some of our 2-hour parking to short-term drop-off and pickup. This is not something for the immediate future, but something that came up during our engagement around the multimodal transportation hub for folks who need proximate parking for a very quick amount of time. Perhaps designating some of the 2-hour spots, not many, just a few, as someplace that you can only stay for 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Right now we have that you can just hit the button, but if those spots are jammed up by people who are staying for 2 hours, they're not going to be available for the people who need them for that 10 minutes. Another suggestion we've gotten has been to implement free summer parking on Saturday mornings. So sort of, you know, everybody's been down at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. It's incredibly vibrant. There's a lot going on. Might be something to consider also as just sort of a, you know, let's all get this back on track and get everybody back on the same page kind of idea. I'll go to the bottom one first because it's a little easier to explain. The quarter only street signage. If you've noticed some of our street signs, if you go to pay at a parking meter, and these are old signs, they've been here for probably 10 years or more, that says you have to pay at the meter between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. There's a little stickum at the bottom that says quarters only. Quarters only refers to the parking meter, but apparently people are confused. So we can think of something that we can do this a little bit better and be clearer. Meters take quarters only, or use passport apps, something along those lines. So
meters actually say quarters only.
the meters also say quarters only. Yes,
People are confused by what?
by the signage that says quarters only. So folks are seeing the passport sign and they're seeing a sign that says quarters only, and they don't know if that means they can only use quarters, not passport, or if they can only use passport and not quarters. You can use both. So perhaps this is an educational thing that we can get in front of, or perhaps we can reimagine that signage. But this is just sort of a summary of the.
We can teach.
Quarters optional, quarters alternative.
How about not having any?
We can also just leave it alone. There is the option to leave it alone.
To me, it's like a lot of the stuff is going to be so temporary, because as soon as, you know, we get
Right.
the parking structural going and the other stuff is going to happen, a lot of this time is just not, it's going to be irrelevant. And a lot of this stuff is just going to be changed anyway. So for me, you know what? I'm okay with quotas only.
I'm inclined to agree.
I think you're just putting the list of.
Well, these are the things that we've heard most frequently, right? So, and this, I mean, candidly, that's towards the bottom of the list. We've heard it a handful of times. But zone lockout after, and you can see the first 3 items have a yellow asterisk next to them. You can't really see it very well with the glare, but all 3 of those items would require board action in order to move forward. So it changed to the code of some sort. The 4th bullet down is something that we've been sort of noodling with in order to sort of help some of the concerns that we've been hearing. So this wasn't a direct suggestion, but something that we're sort of intuiting out of the other things that we've heard. So right now, if you want to park in one of the nose in parking spots along Main Street, or anything up along Main Street or Spring Street, it's a 2-hour maximum. That's you know what parking enforcement is looking for. But right, you're savvy. You can go into the app, you can pay for 2 hours, you can wait for it to expire, and then you can pay for another 2 hours and then wait for it to expire. So there's really not a lot of incentive to move people towards the parking lot where they're paying exactly the same amount than to park directly in front of one of our businesses where they perhaps don't need to be staying for as long as they're using that parking spot. So this is something that we can talk about more. Passport has sort of a peculiar way of informing people that that's what's happening. So I need to work with them a little bit on the in-app notification if this is something that we're looking to do. But again, this is sort of to incentivize folks who need to be in a spot for longer than 2 hours to go to the parking lot, and for people who need to be there for less than 2 hours to park on the street. So this was something that Nelson Nygaard in a roundabout way had suggested in terms of pricing tiers. We think this is probably an easier way to handle it. But again, not something that needs to happen immediately, just something that we should be considering as part of this whole program. Jamie, if you go to the next and final slide, is really just about how we've been working on getting the word out there and how we will continue to. Sorry, I didn't mean to knock you for a loop here, Jamie. So basically, you know, all of these changes legislatively have already gone through public hearings. You know, we've had a lot of outreach around this, and most recently, you know, we've had a lot more specific outreach around this. And here are the ways that folks can learn about what's going on. We're speaking regularly with downtown business owners, as I'm sure the board is as well. The village website has been updated. We're using social media. We're using our big bellies. We're asking for feedback. I think that's sort of the most important thing here. There's never going to be a time that we're going to perfect this and it's going to work perfectly for everyone who needs to use it. But it's really important that the public be aware that we're open. We want this to work for as many people as possible, for people to feel heard, for people to feel safe, for people to feel, you know, for whatever reason, they're not comfortable using a credit card, that they still have the cash option. So we just sort of wanted to highlight. And then Jamie, if you click on the yellow circle, just a reminder to folks that if you have a question about parking, that comes to my email, and I think a couple other folks in a few other departments. You can email parking@villageofossining.org, and we'll get back to you as soon as we're able. That's obviously not for an urgent emergency, but something that you can get in touch with someone directly, and then we'll route you to the right person. That is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
I'm going to start on my left. I have a bunch of questions, but let's just start. It's a big topic.
Thing, I spoke with Maddie earlier in the week, I think, about the Saturdays with the farmer's market and our senior citizens, that they have problems understanding what's going on, or they don't have the smartphones or this, that, and the other thing. So I said, you know, probably not my only suggestion was to maybe do Saturday mornings, you know, while the market's on, to do a free parking from 8 to 12.
So you're a proponent of Saturday morning free in the Market Square, or also for the street ones?
Well, there's no parking in Market Square because the market's there.
No.
You mean the
I
post
didn't- I
office?
meant the
Yeah.
post
The post office
office.
lot or Main Street.
I'm just asking.
Yeah,
So
the
you're a
general
proponent,
vicinity.
Like designated,
Yes,
okay, just free till like 1 or something,
whatever.
till, as long as the farmer's market, and then other businesses benefit.
Right.
Okay, so that's.
That's all I have.
That's all you have.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Sir?
So I'm gonna piggyback on now Market Square. And I'm surprised people haven't said anything about the holidays. Sure, because that's one of the things that we always, you know, say that, like, can we have free parking spaces?
Oh, you mean the holiday
the holiday
season? Because
season
all federal
itself.
holidays are free. That's.
Well, not
yeah.
that part. Yeah, the holiday season, obviously at the end of the year, sure. That didn't come up.
I have heard very little about that. If
It usually comes up almost at the end of the year.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a seasonal question.
Yeah. So for me is, if we're gonna do one, might as well look into the as well, something that the question that we always been asked, you know, they're gonna say, well, why we benefit just one section? Sure. And you may be right, Mayor. They've been benefit on the summer, you know, at least for Market Square, they may benefit. Some of the business may benefit, not all of them. But at the same time, for me, so if we're gonna do one, let's look into the other one as well. And again, this is gonna be temporary. You know, so I don't want to get caught up in the temporary portion, because a lot of the stuff is going to be shifting in the next 2 years, maybe more, hopefully 2 years. I think the part that I have a concern for me, and again, depending on how everything develops, it will be one of the you had about 5 or less, where there's some suggestions, some from people
Yeah.
going forward. And one of them was the drop off. That also came up on the parking study that we did downtown.
A
part.
little different. Yeah, yeah.
That's, for me, it's the same
Yeah.
concept, sure, it's the same concept, and I was against that then, and I'm against this now. I just don't think it's needed. For me, it's taking advantage of that. How do you know? Because you lose control. You lose control of, you really were there 15 minutes? Were you really there half an hour? Or 2 hours. For me, you're losing control. And again, it benefits sections of that street. And again, we're going to be revamping a lot of the stuff that happens in the downtown, and it's just not fair to do that in there. We can do that sort of, and it, I guess, depends on where you are in there. Maybe with the new design, maybe we do design some areas that accomplish sort of what this intent is. But again, that will be in the next 5 years.
I understand
bucket.
your point. Yeah.
So that to me is one of them. The other ones that I saw, I think is something that we could look at it. Not, I think there's other projects that are extremely more important right now that I think we should move forward with. Just addressing parking. I think you guys have done an amazing job in a lot of the stuff that I think this part, at least the last one's, I don't not. For me, it's not a rush.
I see. So for the last 5 bullets, no, okay,
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Dana?
Could you explain this 2-hour lockout to me? again?
Yes, yes. So basically, what happens is, we have 2-hour parking, and the same would be true of any timed parking in the village. But right now, the obviously most desirable parking spaces are the ones that are right along Main Street, the sort of pull-in, nose-in parking spots. So if, for
The
example,
parallel parking spots.
no,
Oh,
the opposite.
the angled ones.
Yeah, the ones
Oh.
that kind of stack up.
The
right
ones that
next
are
to
hard
each
to
other.
get out of.
So I would say of the whole downtown, probably that 60 or so parking spaces are probably the ones that are in the most high demand. So right now, sort of I won't say it's an unforeseen consequence because we did sort of anticipate this, but I think we thought that we'd be able to walk and chew gum. Basically, if I want to be downtown for 8 hours, it is going to cost me just as much to park in one of those spaces, which are more desirable, than to park in the parking lot. Obviously, the stores want people in those nose-in angled parking spots to be turning over more quickly because they're the most desirable. Oh, there's a right in front of the ice cream store. I can pull right in. What we're trying to do by the 2-hour lockout is sort of affect behavior. So if somebody needs to be downtown for more than that 2 hours, we invite you to cross the street and park in the parking lot. That's long-term parking. To lock someone out basically means if they park in one of the 2-hour spots, once they're done with their 2 hours, they have to go. They have to leave. Right now, the way that people are able to get around it is, again, park for 2 hours. I wait for it to expire. I re-up. I put another 2 hours. This is something that parking enforcement is aware of. And because technically it's legal because we're letting people do it through the app, they haven't been ticketing for it. I would argue that it's sort of creating a disincentive for people to use those spots in the way that they've been designed to be used. So could we stop people from continuing to feed the meter with quarters? We can't. But to the degree that we can control that, we would be able to do that by basically you put in your license plate. I'm parking in this zone. I've been there for 2 hours. Oh, I need another 2 hours. It would basically tell you your money's no good here. You got to go park someplace else.
Because I know that, for example, when you're getting your hair done, you might need 3 hours if you're getting the full double process, blowout, style. So you shouldn't park in those.
You should park in long-term parking.
So people, how will they know that though?
Well, this is why it's complicated.
Yeah.
And this is why, like I said, this is something that it wasn't that this was unforeseen. We just knew that this was going to be unpopular. So to have paired it with the change that we did on January 1st would have been wise. But I think we were trying to sort of take incremental steps to this. Is it an emergency situation? It is not. I think part of the reason that folks prefer those spots, besides the fact that they're more convenient, is because they can use quarters. And for folks who are more likely to want to use quarters or for whatever reason not use credit cards or use the app, their only option to park on Main Street is to park in a metered spot. As of June, that will no longer be the case. But from an economic development standpoint, it makes sense for those spots to be turned over more quickly and for long-term parking to be a little bit, similar to the concept of parking employees at the bottom of Central Avenue. So it's sort of.
Which is kind of a schlep uphill if
Oh,
you're working
it's a huge
downtown.
schlep.
Yeah.
It's a huge schlep.
So
And I know.
bring your walking
Valerie-
shoes. people.
Valerie's firm
Yeah.
works in Dobbsbury, where I think they have like a Main Street Business Employee Parking Program. They are fortunate that they have a couple municipal lots that are just off of the main street, that's,
Mm.
you know, very flat, that people can say, oh, I'm gonna be working at the pizza shop for 8 hours today. I'm gonna go park over there because I don't need to be right here. We don't really have that option right now. You know, we have St. Paul's, which is a permit lot. You know, there are some secret places that folks have learned over the years, but, you know, we don't really have a good plan B for this, which is why Central Avenue was actually recommended by the folks at, I think it was at the Ironworks initially when we were doing the study, to sort of pilot Central Avenue as an employee parking program. It's not amazing. I don't know that I would do
What's the
that.
timeline for fixing the wall and getting our spots back along there? I mean, aren't we losing a bunch of parking from that situation?
Remains in court.
Mm.
We are pursuing them as quickly as we can.
That's a huge court issue.
Mm.
It's a big money case,
Yeah.
not to do with us. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Sir?
Thank you. This is not easy stuff, very complicated. I appreciate the pay stations in particular. I know that those are going to be helpful to folks. I wonder two things. One, as folks are coming from other municipalities or going from Ossining to other places nearby, there's a kind of shared language. So for example, when I go to a supermarket anywhere, there's like the regular and then there's 10 items or less. That's the express lane. And so I don't really have to know, well, how does Acme do it? It's like, it's an express lane. It's 10 items or less, maybe 15. Maybe that's the only thing that ranges. If there is any other municipality that has a lightning lane, a quick stop, something that denotes this is for short term versus regular parking spot, which could be long term or something else, but that we use language that is not unique to Ossining, that would be helpful. But maybe no one else has tried to tackle this problem, and we are out there trailblazing once again, and we are the ones that are adding language that makes it easy for people to understand, including if there are colors involved. All the red spots are, you got to move quick. It's red versus it's blue. It's chill. Like you're good. It's long term. You're fine. Anything like that is helpful. So this is a place where placemaking, they may have some ideas, including with the employee parking areas that we're talking about. Like, I grew up in New York City, and there are street artists that do sidewalk art, including, by the way, with power washing. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this. So what they do is they take stencils and they power wash the sidewalk on the stencil. So it's like, it doesn't like wash away. If you just power wash the whole sidewalk, it all goes away. But so you can have like little inspirational messages for employees, like, thank you for making Ossining whatever, as they're like walking up. It's like, we appreciate you. You're an essential worker. We love you, whatever, right? Up along the way. But just something that says, like, we know that you're here, we see you, and we're not just having you take this journey for no reason, but you're making it possible for other people to be able to visit your particular establishment. So just ideas to throw in the mix. I appreciate all of the details here.
Thank you.
Great. So thank you. Lots of stuff. If I could just give you my feedback. I like the Saturday piece.
Mayor, can you put your microphone on, please?
Hi, thank you
Thank you.
for everything. I like the Saturday idea 9 to 1. Not for any other reason except that our intention for all of this is not to make money. Everybody's, oh, you're nickel and diming us. Actually not. This is not, it's actually for behavioral issues that we've had problems with. People who, instead of parking by the train, park to save money and then walk down and take up the space for 12 hours. So people who need that space for a store, for the deli, don't have that available, et cetera. And businesses who use it instead of paying for parking the way they're supposed to, et cetera, et cetera. So I like the Saturday. It's a busy time. Why not? One day a week, do holidays. I think nobody asks anymore because most of me taking that off the table. But I do like, I would do like Memorial Day to Labor Day, something simple, something straightforward, no matter what we do. Why didn't you do it a month earlier and 2 months later and blah, blah, blah. I just think the summer idea of people walking around and it's busier, et cetera, is great. I do want this entire presentation or conversation about parking to be more specific. That's my ask. This is actually not parking in the village, and it's not parking in Ossining. It's really just the downtown. Upper Croton, we don't charge for much of the parking, so it's not affecting that area. Lots and private lots and all that belong to stores or whatever. Open Door is redoing their stuff. Their lot is their lot. It has nothing to do with us. Which I'll get back to in a minute with Open Door. So I really want every page, it tells the story. I need this named downtown so that people understand this is not actually a parking study. In fact, I probably would have voted against this parking study had I realized that it was only about the downtown, because our biggest challenges are in the residential areas, not in the downtown. That's actually more of a challenge in the downtown, as it turns out. So let's do that. And then maybe one day a board will pass a study for the rest of the community and the residential areas and what's going on there. So I put that as an ask. The other piece about this whole employee parking scenario, I think needs more attention. It's not about 8 spaces. You know, get your hair done at Vaza. They have a great business, but they've got to have at least a dozen employees there. And everybody wants to park right there, right? That work there. That takes up a lot of spaces. I don't have a solution for employee parking. We're like on the side of a hill, a mountain. I mean, it's 45-degree area, except for a couple of spots. I don't have a great solution, but I think this whole employee thing needs to be discussed with the big employers. Like, we have to make a decision that a big employer is somebody who has more than 20 employees. Open Door was supposed to build a multi-level parking lot. Then it didn't. I understand what they're building and what they have across the street. Their employees alone will take up more spaces than they're building. I mean, that's already a fact. And they're a great partner to have in the community because all those people have to eat somewhere. They have to do stuff places. They buy gifts. They go out afterwards. I'm not against it, but I think the employee parking scenario has to be addressed with the big employers. So Vaza may not fall into a big, and I don't mean to point, it's just I get my hair done there and I love the place, but it's a good place. But she's right. Most of the people there are there for 4 hours. So I just think that the employee issue and how we deal with Open Door. I don't like the loading zone concept. I think at one point, if Manny can remind me, we talked about talking to Open Door, that people should be dropped in the back, not right in front where people can't pull in or out. And it's not because people are handicapped. It's just because people don't want to go to the back. It's ridiculous. And Open Door should be responsible for that, not the municipality and not the police and not enforcement. It's their responsibility because it's their employees and their clientele. So I think some of the onus should be also on them, especially since they're also building right across the street, a whole thing. So I really think the whole employee piece, same thing for Neighbors Link. They're on a corner. I mean, I know how many employees they have there at most given times. No parking. They have to park on the streets. So we have to decide, and I'd like a recommendation from you guys. What's considered employer that you talk to and say, hey, you're at a number where we have to have a conversation about where your employees park for 8 hours or 6 hours or 10 hours or whatever it is. Because some of them don't work 8 hours. They work 5 hours or 3 hours. So I really appreciate that conversation with them because maybe they can help us with this. I don't have a solution for that. Loading zone, the 2-hour lockout, I don't even know how you're going to enforce any of this. Like somebody wants to park and they paid $1 and they want to park another 2 hours. They're at the deli, they met somebody for lunch, they're at First Village, they bumped into a neighbor. So what? The app did not work well for me today. It never informed me that my spot was over the way. I had like 3 different apps because in Westchester, different municipalities, I called you about it and never informed me. So we just have to figure that out. I'm not for it. I'm not going to fight over it. I just don't think we need to lock out. I understand your point. If you could do something that gives people a little bit more time, because I think what you're trying to avoid is somebody parking for 8 to 10 hours there. Like just sitting in that spot and never moving. I think that's what you're going for. Okay, so that's fine. But I think the Saturday thing is the biggest win for everybody. So if we do nothing else except that and look at employee parking, I'm good with it. The other piece of this is, and you might tell me it's because we switched vendors. When we started this journey, we talked about, let's look at data for 6 months. Let's not keep all this input and the tents call us about everything. Let's actually get data in parks, where they park, how many hours. We were supposed to collect data for 6 months. Then we were supposed to look at the data from all of this and then make decisions based on the data. Are we doing that? Because I'm hearing you say people had input on this. I don't have a problem with input, but I sometimes feels like the same 10 people, you know, about everything downtown. 10 people doesn't actually make the whole thing. I do like the app because you can actually input into the app your opinion. I mean, if you look at it, you can actually click through and say, I hate this, I like it, this didn't work for me. I doubt a lot of people do that. So how are we collecting data and making decisions on data? Not, and by the way, the 8 to 10 a.m. thing, eliminating that, if I didn't say it, I agree. It was such a good thought.
You agree to eliminate it. You
Yeah,
would like to eliminate.
Based on your recommendation, I don't think anybody else said that, but I mean, you know, it was a really good thought to help the businesses, which is the whole point here. If it's not working, well, throw it out, okay? How are you using data actually?
So with respect to, there's two different ways that we monitor this. So one is through the Passport sort of back end. So we can see how many people are parking in what zone for what duration. We can get a lot of information about, you know, whether this is a brand new user, whether this person parks here every day. That's all information that's available to us. Their reporting is pretty robust. That's the easy part. The difficulty is because we're still using the quarter only operated meters on the street. In those particular instances, we can still say how many people are using the app and how long they're there and what have you. But since folks in those instances still have the opportunity to use a quarter, we're losing that data. But here's the good news. When we go to the pay station, again, it's going to have buttons on the screen. You're going to have to select a zone and you're paying by plate. So even if you go to pay by coin, even if you go to pay by cash, we're going to capture the information about where you're parking and for how long. So that will be an improvement. In terms of, you know, auditing with the coin operated meters, we're able to see where we're collecting, you know, coins more frequently, but that's not as strong data as what I think you're asking for, which is what I think we will be able to provide once all of the paid parking sessions are going through one funnel, basically.
So I don't need to see all the data. I'm just wondering if you've set up some sort of a system that says, now we're going to look at time data and not just input from individuals.
Yeah,
who,
of
you know,
course.
bothered by it. So I think those were the questions that you asked. And as I said, the employee is a complicated one. And I think we need to revisit, and I think we need to do it with the top 10 employers. Top 10 meaning top 10 that have the number of humans.
Mhm. Volume, yeah.
Yeah, not revenue or size of the building or anything like that, including nonprofits, by the way. I think that's it from me. I think this is great. I hope you got some of the answers that you were looking for.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So what we'll come back with the next time is immediately twofold. One is to enact the summer free Saturdays, and then we'll come up with some language around that. That'll be for the parking lot, but then also, I guess, Main and Spring will come up with some parameters that the board can discuss. And then likewise, the elimination of the free daily 8 to 10. It sounds like those are the only two places where there's some consensus.
Well, is there consensus on the loading? Only 2 people discussed the loading. So
We're not even there.
Yeah,
It sounds like
not
that's,
even there.
and I
Okay.
think you would be able to not have to do that if you did the 2-hour lockout, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. So let's take this win and move forward with these
Yeah,
two.
not a win or lose. It's just, I think you're asking for input on a dozen things. So you got 2 or 3.
I got
people.
2 I got.
Well, that's okay. And others are like, they're not that important. Let's leave it for another time. So
Totally.
that's not quite a yes or a no. Anything
What-
you
I'm
left
sorry,
out?
explain to me again why the free 8 to 10 didn't work.
So some of what we're hearing, some of at first was that the signage wasn't clear. So we said, okay, so we put, I mean, if you're in that parking lot, pretty much every 10 spaces, there's a sign that says daily free 8 to 10. Then we got some feedback that, okay, well, if folks can only use the app to park, and let's say, for example, to your
They're going
point,
past 10. Yeah,
yeah, they're
yeah.
going into to
And
get
they
a haircut.
can't-
They start at 9 o'clock. Now you're asking them to sit in the chair and at 10:01 go,
Yeah.
like, so we can fix that if we if the app can't do that, it's
Yeah.
not gonna learn how unless we switch apps, which we may someday, but not immediately. The app doesn't know how to do that. The pay station does. The pay station knows how to let you prepay,
Okay.
but only an hour in advance. So we still haven't really solved the problem. If somebody has an 8:30 hair appointment, now they're kind of playing fast and loose.
We're
for
only
that half
talking
hour.
hair. I don't want everybody to think it's only about the hair.
No,
I
but
mean,
no,
it's the
so
coffee
if you have a
places, the
breakfast date,
delis.
Right? You're
Yeah.
Yeah,
going to
because
meet
the,
someone
weren't
for
the
breakfast.
places like if you,
You go to the
wanna-
bank for a meeting with your bank officer and it takes longer than you thought, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
We have like the least expensive parking.
I
What's
just
next?
using the app. I used it a lot yesterday. I had a friend come into town and I showed him around and we were parking. And app worked great. It's like $1, you know, and we weren't staying anywhere more than an hour. And once you get it programmed and get it going, it works great. It's fast,
yeah. I
but you
think
got to set it up and.
what the mayor and I were discussing earlier was some
thought I was
apps
using it
will
too.
send you a text message that you can say in certain increments, hey, you have 30 minutes left, like wrap it
I
up.
just want to
or
alert
send-
you if you're coming to an
It
end.
gives you a push notification.
Right.
But not a text message.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
So I'm still trying to figure out if there's a way that you maybe can enable it or disable it. I did it a couple times today and it stayed on my screen even when I tried to get rid of it, it kept
Mhm.
coming back. So maybe that's an Android thing. I'm sorry. But you know, it's something that we can continue to look into. But again, that's really the issue with the 8 to 10 is for folks who plan to get there sometime between
Mhm.
8 and 10 and stay after 10 o'clock. It's kind of a no man's land situation, and we can accommodate it to some degree with the pay station, but not to the degree
Yeah.
that it's going to fix it. So I really love the idea.
So is
I'm
it a
sad.
big problem that it outweighs the benefits of having 2 hours of free parking?
I will tell you that we've not heard from one person that's like, oh my God, this is amazing that we have 2 hours. I mean, like,
It was intended to help like the delis and stuff like that, you know, between 8 and 10. It turns out people don't get it and it hasn't helped people. I think it's just not worth all the trouble, even though it had really good intentions, because it was free 8 to 10. But it actually causes more problems and then people get ticketed because they weren't sitting there. It's like stressful, you know?
Yeah.
You're like having coffee and all of a sudden you go, oh man, I missed by 20 minutes, you get a ticket, like, oh, come on. So it's just not worth the hassle. So yeah, cost benefit. So it's not a money cost benefit. It's like annoying versus not annoying.
yeah, we don't want to be annoying. We're trying to be as helpful as possible, but unfortunately, this particular aspect has come off as being very.
Good idea, though. Good idea.
What
Okay.
those 2 hours become?
I would imagine that it would then be, I mean, it's a little bit cleaner this way. It would be
8
8 AM to 8 PM, you have to pay, 8 PM to 8
Yeah.
AM, you used your permit.
Okay, this will require unfortunately a local law.
Yeah,
No. It presents an opportunity because something Maddie and I have discussed. Instead of each time having to do a local law, we can put into this revision that the board can by resolution change parking in terms of time. Because otherwise, every time you do it, you're gonna have to do a local law.
oh,
So this will
okay.
now
Well, this is
require.
good.
You would put that into the local law.
yeah,
Yes.
That going
an
forward, it's a
opportunity.
resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. Take that opportunity and run with it.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Just the hair issue does not become much for me.
So yours does not take 4 hours, is what you're saying to me. And we don't refund, so you're gonna have to spend the whole buck.
This is all excellent feedback. So thanks
No,
to
this
the
is
board,
great.
but also
This is a
thanks
big
to
deal.
the folks in the community who have been very patient and, you know, trying to make sure that we're getting good information about what is going to be most helpful for our businesses and our residents.
No, I think it's great. Yeah, it sounds like that's one of the ones that, oh, when do you want to start that?
Well, we might not have time
It would
to
have
get
be
there.
local law as well. We'll just put it all together. Maddie, we'll just discuss the times and
Yeah.
is it just Main, Spring, West, or is it gonna be the spots on Main as well?
It sounds like
I
the
think the
board
whole
is-
thing,
is
you know,
considering
yeah.
the
Bob was
Yeah.
going for a small area, Manny suggested my stuff.
Yeah.
here, why not just-
Main Street and the parking lot.
And the Main Street West, yeah, Spring West.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing for me is the whole downtown
Well, do you
itself.
want to just say all?
I think it'll just start
meters?
parking meters in the downtown. Yeah,
You just-
I think,
I don't have a problem.
I don't-
Anybody have a problem with
No.
that? I don't think we need to discuss. So Bob, it's even a little tiny bit bigger than you asked.
just to me, in a way,
Oh,
again,
you-
so in 2 years, most likely future boards may gonna be changing that. Cause it's not gonna be
Can
a
I,
lot of some of the stuff in there. So just think about, just for now, but in the future as well, what will be easier?
Can I make an ask just logistically, because this sounded really good until I realized what it was actually going to look like?
Oh.
If we could only do the parking lot, that is imminently more doable, because if we're now gonna do the meters on the street, that we're gonna say you have a reprieve between 8 and 1, are we gonna bag the meters? Are we gonna change all the signs for a 3-month period? That is gonna overly. It can, but if people want to pay with quarters, I don't know how we,
And then they'll be upset that they paid with the quarters when they didn't have to.
Bag them. Don't we have the
but we're
bags?
gonna bag them every Saturday
Costs us a
morning.
fortune to do that.
To do some signage.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's easier to not do that. If the board feels very strongly, we can do
Okay.
it, but it's not gonna be.
Memorial
Gonna
Day,
change that. I'm good with the parking lot. That's fine.
yeah, the Memorial Day is coming up. If we get started for this summer, which is a nice get, right? It's summer, right? Memorial Day, Labor Day, it's people get that, summer, blah, blah, blah. Let's start with that, because you're gonna do it as a law that says the parking can be changed if we need to change to a greater vicinity. So you're right.
We'll start in just the parking lot then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question on that. Talking about an addendum to changing times in the new local law, can there be an addendum to doing a section for free parking without having to go to a local law? Can that be included in what we want to do?
That if the board, if upon resolution could determine that certain locations could be free parking. we can
Right.
just-
Then we can
And we'll-
decide different
We,
things.
we pass it one time and off we go.
And then when you figure out the rest, maybe it'll be for next summer. Look, I think, I love that we're in the express lane here, but I think it's reasonable to start somewhere based on feedback, and I appreciate all the feedback. I always say, though, I just want to make sure it's not the same 10 people, that it's a wider group and that we understand that. But the feedback is excellent. It's why we're changing things rapidly.
I will say I've made a lot of new friends, because names that I've never heard before have called
That's good.
with ideas, so.
That's fine. I mean, we also have more people. I actually read that as a super positive. It says that people feel they're being heard and feel that when they say things, they're actually being heard and things are done. Like, that's because people become apathetic when they feel that when they speak, no one listens. So I think this is a good thing, actually.
So we're thinking about just making on Saturdays, the free would be the post office parking lot, which used to be free anyway,
For Saturdays, 9 to
for
1.
Saturdays. No.
That's what we're gonna bring back, is just the the spaces that are currently paid on Saturday morning will now be free on Saturday morning. The spaces that are permitted on Saturday morning, unless the board feels differently, are gonna stay permitted, because those are for folks who live in the neighborhood.
Right.
So it'll just be, if you had to pay this Saturday, you will now not have to pay.
I thought it
during
was
the
9
summer.
to 1. You're saying not 9 to 1?
But we can align it with the hours
I
of the
think it's a
market,
good
whatever.
idea. I think, you gotta get that information out in some big way. I think people will appreciate it, and I think it will create, these hours where I think you're gonna have lots of commerce going on, which you already do, but maybe it'll help even.
Mm-hmm.
We could align it with the
Boost
hours
that.
of the market, maybe 8 to 2, because then the other side of the street opens up anyway, so that's probably a good bracket.
Okay.
Right?
Nice. Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, executive session?
Motion to adjourn.
So
For a matter of-
Second. We have a first. Did you get the first and the second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9:45. My phone died. I think it's about 9:45 and we are adjourned. We will see everybody again next Wednesday and we're adjourned.